Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to look at how to write a satire. You'll be reading two satires for your homework this week, and one of them is a little bit longer than the other and really much more drastic than the other, but they're good examples for you of what a good satire is and for how to write one. First, let's look at what satire is. It's a literary device using humor, sarcasm, and a distortion of reality for the purpose of causing readers to look at reality in a different way. Some of you are probably naturally very humorous, and some of that humor is probably attributable to the kind of wit you would involve in your version of sarcasm. We often refer to people as sarcastic today, and sarcastic doesn't always mean when we say it, what the actual meaning is. Sarcastic remarks are usually intended to be biting or hurtful in some way, but we often use sarcasm for humor. So this is your chance to really let that humorous, sarcastic side of you come out on the page. It also uses a distortion of reality that allows you to kind of create a different world for the sake of showing an exaggerated version of the world that you live in. It usually contains an element of censure, because typically satire is aiming to correct a problem in society. Some elements of satire are parody, which is a literary or artistic work that imitates the characteristic style of an author or artist for comic effect or ridicule. We see a lot of sarcasm everywhere, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Most of it is really for the comic effect with a little bit of ridicule in there. It uses sarcasm, which, as we said, is cutting language intended to mock, deride, or inflict pain. Exaggeration, which is overstatement. And the double entendre, which is a statement that can be understood in two different ways, especially if one is risque. There are several types of satire, and they are verbal, situational, and visual. And here are some examples. This is visual satire as well as situational. This one is my personal favorite. I also really love this one. This one is another very situational irony situation. Some characteristics of satire. Satire requires and rewards intelligence. You have to know what the article is even talking about. You have to have a knowledge of the issue at hand in order to get the humor, to get the point. So when you are intelligent and you are well studied on the issues at hand, then it's a lot more meaningful for you. It may not even be meaningful to you if you aren't keeping up on news and whatever else that may be going on. It has potentially two different audiences: those who agree with you and those who you, the author, are trying to make look foolish. It often doesn't go over very well in our politically correct world. In our politically correct world, we have a hard time being able to say really the truth of a matter because the world doesn't want to hear truth and it might be offensive to someone. The trouble with satire in our culture is that everything is so politically correct. People are desensitized to the wrong things, like violence and sexuality, which we see in our entertainment industry all the time, but they're overly sensitive to social and political issues. So that makes much satire perceived to be offensive. let's think about Swift's modest proposal for a moment. In the background information for Swift, he lived in the 18th century in what is known as the Restoration period, when the monarchy had been restored in England after the English Civil War and its aftermath. The essay is the last in a series he wrote attempting to address the issue of poverty in Ireland. He was really outraged at the way the public government was treating the Irish poor. And as you listen to the rest of this background, think about the parallels in this culture compared to ours. He sought to lay blame where it was rightfully belonged, at the doorstep of every man and woman who was aware of the problem, but was more interested in their own welfare and the welfare of others. In fact, no one escaped the barbs of his pen. What he was doing was showing his outrage at the way the British government was treating the Irish poor. But not just how the poor were being treated, but how everyone was treating the poor and how the poor were responding. No one escapes his ridicule. He criticizes the poor for being lazy and indolent. He criticizes the middle class for being greedy. And he criticizes the rich for their complacency. So you have the poor who aren't working. They're lazy in Swift's eyes. You've got the middle class who are greedy. They don't want to give any money to the poor because they may or may not be just making it with what they have. And by just making it, that means the life that they want to live. And the upper class, the rich, who are so out of touch with reality that they're really complacent. So then he begins his discussion. The problem is the poverty, this great poverty in the society. He talks about the beggars commonly seen on the streets. He does some mathematics to prove that there will be a lot more beggars to come. And then he introduces his proposal. He proposes that wealthy and even middle-class British people begin eating the children of the poor for supper. The advantages, he says, are fewer papists. The poor will now have a valuable possession. There will be a great profit in selling so many children. Women will save money by not having to care for their children past 1 year. Profits to taverns, helpful to marriages as men would be more fond of their wives, and so on. So he lists all of the wonderful advantages to eating the children. Swift then goes on to the objections to his proposal. And one of the objections is, well, why don't we eat older children? Why do they have to be babies up to 1 year old? And he says, because those children are too stringy. They don't have enough meat on their bones. They're not really good for sale because you're not getting very much for your money's worth. Makes sense. He does acknowledge one objection, and that is if we ate all the children, there won't be any more. To which he says, well, exactly. That's the whole point, population control. If we have fewer people, there's more money to go around and everybody benefits. Then he makes the important step, which you do too in the satire that you write, by establishing the neutrality of himself. He's not gaining anything nor losing anything in his proposal because he explains his children are grown and his wife is past childbearing age. So he's not going to be able to sell any of his own children, nor will he lose any of his own children. And then he gets to the true solution. If Swift doesn't actually think that the Irish should eat their own children or sell them to the English to eat, what does he think they should do about poverty? And this is his true solution. He admonishes and explains that the poor need to get up and work, the middle class need to be more supportive, and the rich should stop being so greedy and stop taking advantage of the poor. So use that basic guideline for writing your own satire, and use these steps, these bullet points, when you're reading I Want a Wife, and try to fill in, answer those same questions when you read I Want a Wife. What was the problem? What's the proposal? What are the advantages to the proposal? What are the objections to the proposal? Is the author being neutral? And what was the true solution to the problem? Here are some tips on writing a satire. First, think of a social problem you know something about and are interested in, such as poverty, unemployment, healthcare, high fuel costs. It could even be something like issues on Facebook. Should people vent their problems on Facebook? Is it really a place for political indictment or any of those things? Present the problem, just like Swift did, and describe an outlandish solution, being serious the whole time. That seriousness is really key to the effectiveness of your satire. You present this solution that's really ridiculous, almost ludicrous, but you say it so seriously that it brings across that humor and really the gravity of the whole satire. Describe reasons why your solution would work, and describe solutions that are actually reasonable, but then explain why they won't work. Explain why you will not benefit from this proposal. Just like Swift described how he was neutral, that his wife was beyond childbearing age and his children were too old to be sold or eaten. And in the end, make sure that the real point of your satire comes across. What are you really trying to say? And pay attention to how Swift does that, and pay attention to how the end of I Want a Wife accomplishes that. There is satire around you everywhere, especially in the entertainment industry. You see it all the time. The website The Onion has really great examples of articles that are completely satirical, and the link for that website is in the actual lesson. When you close out of here, you can click that, and it will bring you to the website, and you can look up archives of satirical articles that are really humorous but really effective. I hope that as you begin working on your satire, that you're thinking about something that really is important to you and that you have a lot of fun with it. This is your opportunity to have a voice and be able to be yourself, maybe you're a little bit of your sarcastic self, be able to bring across that humor and write in a way that you probably haven't done up to this point. And of course, if you need any help, you can email me at any time.